excuse me, we're at the point in the agenda where we were looking for public comment on non-agenda items. So if anyone would like to make a comment to the board or to the committee on an item not on today's agenda, would you please raise your hand and indicate to staff that that's your intent?
All right. And if you are calling in, it is *9 to raise your hand to speak. And Chair, it looks like we have one member of the audience, Mr. Mattson.
Okay, Mr. Mattson, go ahead, please.
Yes, I just want to note that other people were having problems getting in. The Zoom link was not working and the phone was not working. So I don't know if the other members have been able to get in yet. Specifically, I know Brian Papstein wasn't able to get in, and he has an application that he was willing to speak to if he had the opportunity.
Okay. Perhaps what we could do is, there are a couple of housekeeping items that we could undertake on the agenda and give those individuals a opportunity to try again access. And what I'd like to do then is just I guess recess the public comment period at this point in time, and we will take it up again after the approval of the action summary and after the county administrative office updates, before we get into any of the actual business. So we will hold public comments if there are any at this point in time and give the public another opportunity. Let's move to the discussion items, the first of which is the approval of the March 4th action summary. Are there any requests for any modifications of the action summary? Any changes or modifications to the action summary? Then the chair would entertain a motion to approve as submitted.
I move we approve the action summary.
Is there a second?
I second.
Any discussion? Any public comments? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by raising your hand.
Like 9-0.
Okay. Next item is County Administrative Office updates.
Chair, I don't have any updates that are relevant for the Measure Z committee at this point in the process.
Okay. Do you have any indication that there are any members of the public that were wishing to comment on non-agenda items?
To comment on the county administrative office updates, I don't see any hands raised.
Okay. And you have none that carried over from the previous public comment period?
No, I don't, Chair.
Okay. But we're unsure at this point in time whether the link is actually working and whether or not we have access for the public.
Yeah, right now, Chair, I have 19 attendees and one phone call, one person on the phone here. And our staff checked the phone line and made sure that it's working. So I'm not clear exactly what's happening.
Okay. Can you unmute the phone line participant and see what their interest is, please?
Oh, the phone line. Oh, let's see. So I have last four of your phone number is 3174. And if you would like to speak, we are bringing you in so that you can talk with the chair if you would like. Phone caller with last four numbers 3174. So you can press *6 to unmute yourself. You can talk with the chair. Definitely not required to, though. All right, looks like they not getting a response from them, Chair.
Okay. Do you have access to any of the non-participating staff members that you could ask one of them to try to reach us and see if that's successful. So we'll have an understanding whether the phone links and so on are functional.
Sure. You're saying you want me to have a staff member call in?
Yeah, just have someone that you have access to that's not participating call in and see if it functions.
Sure.
I saw a quick blurb from Miss Hayes here, but I didn't catch it to understand what her message was.
She was using the public link that's on the agenda
Okay,
to get into the meeting. So we're verifying that that link is so that link works.
okay, let's just try a quick phone call and then we'll have an understanding whether we're actually accessible to people.
Okay. One of our staff is calling in right now. All right. All right, I have another call in. Somebody else just called in right now. And last four with 0450. You can press *6 to unmute yourself.
Okay, there. Hi. This is Angela. I was just checking to make sure it worked through the phone.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Angela.
Okay,
All right, Chair, I believe that all of our links and all of our phone numbers are working. I know that Zoom is kind of a complicated thing in a public space, but I believe, after verifying a couple of ways that we can go ahead and proceed.
okay, I would concur. I think we've made a good effort to try to ensure that public comment is functional at this point. If we don't have any as we move through the agenda, because I expect some comments on our questions and so on, then perhaps we'll have to try to verify that again at that time. Next item is distributing letters of support. In your email packet, there was a listing of all the emails and letters of support, and they were available as attachments. Any questions of any committee members or anything regarding the letters of support or clarifications required? Okay. Seeing none, I think we'll move to item D4, which is the responses to the committee questions. My expectation was that we would have some phone input on some of these that we did not receive written input on. Can you just clarify for me? Chief Robertson indicated that he had received an email just in the last hour that had an update of the written answers. Is that correct?
That's correct. But I'm sorry, Chair, we're on item D3, and there are letters of support from the public. So I believe we should go out to public comment.
Okay.
Make a vote to accept the letters of support.
Okay, thank you for the correction. Are there any members of the public that would like to comment on any of the letters of support we've received regarding various applications?
Not seeing anybody raise their hand, so.
Okay. So would the committee entertain a motion, please, to accept the letters of support?
Chair, I'll make that motion.
Okay, a motion by Mr. Roberts, I think a second by Mr. Bronco.
Yes.
Any discussion from the committee? Okay, all those in favor, please indicate by raising your hand in the viewing screen.
All right.
Opposed?
Thank you.
Okay. Now moving to D4, the responses to the committee questions. At various points over the last 2 weeks, we've submitted various questions or clarification requests to staff, which have been forwarded to the applicants. And we received a written summary of some, I don't know, 3 or 4 days ago, but I'm understanding now that an updated summary is just available. So perhaps staff could just, do you know which of the elements are in the updated that we might not all have received? And could you just summarize those for us, please?
Chair, I'm not sure exactly which elements, but I do have the document here on my screen with all of the updated questions. So what happened between the last meeting and this meeting was your committee sent staff questions to forward to applicants.
Okay,
Some of those applicants responded to us in writing, and we have those responses here. We forwarded those responses to your committee so we can make that available also to the public now as we're going through the applications and asking questions of applicants.
okay. So would it be most expeditious to just go through the applications numerically and then let you
Yes.
identify if we've received a response? And if so, if it's in the recent response that was only circulated in the last hour, you could verbalize what it was so we would all have the same information?
Yep.
Okay. In that case, the first question was directed to application number 1, Adult Protective Services. As of 3/8/2021, there was no written response. Do we have any response subsequent to that?
Yes, Chair, we do. We received 2 responses on the screen. Do you want me to read out the responses? Some of these can be pretty lengthy.
Yeah, I was going to say, why don't you just give us a quick second? What I would ask the committee to do is review the written response. And if it generates additional questions or you need clarification, then just please indicate. And if not, I'll just ask at the end of a short period of time if everybody's satisfied that they understand the response. And if that's the case, then we'll move on. Is there a short summary that you could give us of attachment 7, Mr. Quincey?
Chair, maybe the member of Adult Protective Services who submitted this application, maybe they're available to provide a summary.
Okay, certainly. If you would see if they're available and unmute them if they are, so that they could indicate to us what attachment 7 says.
All right, I'm going to bring in District Attorney Fleming. And Maggie, you are in the meeting now and you can, there you go.
DA
Great,
Fleming,
thank you.
welcome to the
Thank
meeting.
you. Thank you. So I regret that this got to the committee late, but in response to the questions, we had 36 elder abuse cases that were investigated. And that can include multiple allegations of abuse and neglect. Some of those came to us specifically through APS. Some of those came to us through law enforcement. So you can see sometimes the numbers in the application are a little bit different for the overall number. Specifically with regards to total allegations, we've seen that's 408 of abuse and neglect. 88 of those were confirmed. Of those, 24 involved a dependent adult abuse. And the types of allegations that were confirmed included 18 allegations of neglect, 43 allegations of physical abuse, mental suffering, and then 29 allegations of financial abuse. We were also asked with regards to the total staffing, there are 3 positions that are funded through Measure Z, and that's the APS program coordinator, that's full-time. We have a district attorney investigator, which is part-time, 50%, and then a deputy district attorney, 25%. I actually have 2 deputy district attorneys that share that caseload. They're both trained in elder abuse because as the caseload has grown, if one's in a hearing or handling a case and another one comes in, we like to have a second person trained for that involvement. But we have continued to do outreach, and we're trying now to do more outreach and involve more of the tribes because of obviously their elder population that is affected by these types of crimes, and also because they are so willing to participate and help us with additional services. So we're doing outreach and educational programs for others. The one other factor we did want you to note is we do believe we're going to see more cases because part of the, I believe it's called the Master Plan on Aging, recommends lowering the age of elders meeting this criteria from 65 to 60. So we're working on that as well.
Okay, thank you. The only portion of the question I see that I didn't hear you address, there was a question of what is the total staffing in terms of FTE for the entire EVAS team? I think what they're trying to understand is what portion of the EVAS team is funded by Z and what portion is funded by your general fund budget?
Oh, so, you know, obviously if our investigator goes more than 50% on these cases, he just continues to work them. And then with Adult Protective Services, when we have our MDT, there are meetings, that is the whole team gets together on Fridays. We have a number of Adult Protective Service social workers who are present. The public guardian is sometimes a participant. So there are other county employees who participate in the program. And I can't give you a total number because there's a number of individuals, and those are individuals who are supported by general fund budgets, both in my office and Department of Health and Human Services.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I offered the first question. Did the party who offered the second question feel that their questions were answered, or do you need any clarification? Okay, thank you, District Attorney Fleming.
Thank you.
Mr. Quincey, do you think we should, we had talked earlier, are we going to hold public comment on this discussion till the end of this block, or do we need to do it on an individual basis?
No, we can hold it to the end. I recommend going through each application and then doing questions, bringing applicants up. And then we'll take public comment at the end on the entire item.
The entire block. Okay, that's what I thought.
Correct.
Okay, the next one is application number 2 in regard to the Arcata Police Department. Seemed to be a pretty direct answer. Did the individual who forwarded this question need any further information, or is this sufficient? Okay, hearing no request for further information, we'll consider it to be responsive. The second,
Just can I interrupt? I'm sorry.
certainly.
Is this an opportunity for everyone to talk about their application as well? So if Chief Ahern is on the line, then maybe he could speak about his application, or is this a good time about that? Or if
I
any
think
one of us has particular questions about an application?
I think both would be appropriate. We might as well, while we're dealing with a specific application, we might as well try to clear the deck of all questions or clarifications regarding that particular element.
Okay.
So did you have something you'd like to offer on application number 2?
My question is, if Chief Ahern is on the line, is that this is not just for Arcata, this is for Northern Humboldt, which includes the county. I just wanted to confirm that that is still a part of this application, and there's many schools besides Arcata schools that are covered by this SRO.
Okay. Do you see an indication that the chief is available to us, Mr. Quincey?
No, Chair, I don't see any hands raised. Is it Chief Ahern?
Yes.
Okay, I do see Chief Ahern in, and he is raising his hand, so I will bring him into the meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Here we go.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Brian Ahern here from Arcata PD. Great question, Sheriff, and correct. We continue to, similar to, the collaboration and the spirit of cooperation we've received over the years from all of our allied agencies here in the county. We want to extend that, as much as we can and as well. And while the question about combining the applications is, there's just too much work to be done by combining them, we still do work very closely together as a law enforcement family. And that includes, assisting the Northern Humboldt Unified School District, which could include, schools in McKinleyville as well. So wherever there's a need and we can help to fill that need, that's our commitment.
Okay. Is that responsive to your inquiry, Sheriff Hansel?
Yes, thank you very much. Appreciate it, Chief.
Okay, any other committee members have questions for the Chief Ahern while he's available to us? Okay, Chief, thank you for your time.
Thank you all.
Okay. Next item, application was number 6, Eureka Broadcasting. I heard an indication that Mr. Papstein might be with us. Is that the case?
Chair, do you want to just go numerically? We'll do number 3. And then when we get to number 6 on the spreadsheet, we can have this up here for people to talk, just so we
Okay.
don't lose our place.
The written materials I have don't indicate that there were any questions forwarded on applications 3, 4, and 5. Am I in error on that?
No, you're correct. We didn't have any written questions, but just to afford everybody a fair chance, maybe we can go to application 3, see if any committee members have
Okay. fair enough.
questions. Okay.
Okay. So do any committee members have any questions on the Trinidad application number 3?
Chair, I do have something to weigh in on that.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. It was posed to me, do I have the staffing to fill a halftime position? And right now we have, we're 12 deputies down. And so this would be one of the lower priorities. This would, if we have the ability to fill this, it wouldn't be till next spring. But again, it's not one of our highest priorities at this point in time.
Okay. So I interpret your comment as saying for the time period addressed by this particular allocation process, it's highly unlikely that you could staff the position.
That is correct.
Okay.
There's other positions that have coordinated with us that would be a higher priority.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions of committee members about application 3? Okay, if you've logged in on the phone or into the meeting from the public and you'd like to address the committee about application number 3, the City of Trinidad's request for a halftime sheriff, could you raise your hand, please, so staff can identify you?
I don't see anybody raising their hand, Chair.
Okay. Application 4 and 5 were deemed to be not within the parameters of the Measure Z at our last meeting, so I think we could dispense with further discussion of those two. That would bring us to number 6, Eureka Broadcasting request. Any committee members have questions? Any members of the public would like to speak to application number 6, Eureka Broadcasting purchase of propane fuel tanks?
Mr. Chair,
Sure.
I actually have a question to Sheriff Hansel, and to kind of bring this back from a comment that he had made last week. And so, if I may, Sheriff Hansel, you talked about how this station was part of the emergency broadcast network the sheriff's office used. So just, I guess for the listening audience, have an opportunity to hear that again. And then I'm just personally curious, what other stations, along with the Eureka Broadcasting Company and K-Mud here in Southern Humboldt, who else does the Sheriff's Department see in that family of emergency radio broadcasters? Thank you.
To my knowledge, there's only 2 that do send those emergency messages out, and that is this applicant and then K-Mud. Last year, we did fund K-Mud in their application to do emergency backup power, and we're finding on the PSPS events and some of these other, catastrophic emergencies that we've had in the county, when power goes out, the only way to get a message to people is through radio. And so by having KINS and K-Mud, they have the ability to operate without any power is going to be a benefit for the entire community. So those are the ways. If there's a catastrophic earthquake, if there's a flood, if there's a PSPS, and we need to get an emergency message out there, these are the radio stations that are going to do it. So to my knowledge, those are the 2 radio stations. So we need those backup power generators operational.
Okay. Anyone in the public sphere like to speak to this application?
I don't see any hands raised, Chair.
Okay. I heard somebody earlier reference Mr. Papstein being here, but apparently that's not accurate, I take it.
Mr. Chair,
He's been,
Go ahead, Sean.
I see
it was ju-
Brian in the audience. And here he goes. I'll bring him in.
Okay.
Hi, guys.
Mr. Papstein, welcome. We're just discussing any questions and clarifications. Anything you'd like to say on behalf of your application?
I would like to kind of piggyback on what Billy had just said. Most all of the radio stations participate, but we are the lead, or what's referenced as LP1. So when there's an event, say if it's something that's triggered by NOAA or by OES, we get the initial and then we share it with others. So we're kind of like the point, if you will, or the lead dog on it. And then we push that out to everybody else. We do currently have one tank here, but one of the issues, and I think almost everybody has been out to our facility, is that we're in the middle of a residential area. So when PG&E is looking to reinvigorate or reconnect everybody, oftentimes we're seen as being residential rather than commercial, or the recognition of where we fit into that emergency broadcast stream. So even though Allison locally knows it, sometimes we're on emergency power a little bit longer than what everybody else is. And this is pretty much designed to maintain us there and to ensure the fact that if it is a catastrophic event and they're dealing with other situations, we can continue to get that word out into the community.
Mr. Cole?
I have a question for you, sir. What's your current operational time under?
24 hours.
Okay.
Any other questions for Mr. Papstein while we have him?
Yeah, Chair, I have a comment. The Wave cable TV system in Garberville has emergency broadcast testing comes over all the time. I don't know if it comes out of the station that we're talking about or not, but we do get emergency broadcast testing.
Yeah, where we are the lead for the radio side, there's also a lead for the television side, and we alternate tests, if you will, every other month. So the two of our outfits, and it used to be KVIQ, I believe it still is, but I'm not 100% certain since some of the ownership changes have occurred. That we are the two that are the LP1s. KMUD is a number 2, and in theory, everybody's all connected together, and that's part of the reason for this system, is so that everybody gets that messaging out.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Papstein? Okay, thank you for your time, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on then. Application 7 is Eureka City Schools SRO officer. There were some written responses to a couple of elements here. Any further clarification needed on the part of committee members? Okay, any members of the public like to speak to application number 7, the Eureka City Schools SRO officer?
Mr. Chair, actually, I have a question.
Certainly.
So on it's page number 7, I guess, program budget, and it says $79,000 for the hiring, equipping, and vehicle for 1 sheriff school resource officer. So, and maybe that's just a misprint, but it's not a sheriff school resource officer. It would be a Eureka City Schools resource
I think
officer.
the word
Right?
they're trying to get is shared, S-H-A-R-E-D.
Shared. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions regarding application 7 from committee members?
Actually, that's not accurate. It is a sheriff resource officer.
Okay, Mr. Van Vleck, well, welcome first of all. Since you're here, why don't you say anything you'd like to say in regards to the applications and the questions that were forwarded?
Sure, I'll just keep it incredibly brief because I know you have a lot that are on here, and I'll just answer any questions that you all have. This would be for half a year of a position. We currently have a school resource officer from the city of Eureka who covers the city proper. The one thing that I'd underscore is that this officer would cover basically 1 in 3 students in the entire county. That would include all the schools within Eureka City Schools, South Bay Elementary School District, Cutton Elementary School District, Freshwater School District, and Garfield Elementary School District as well, in addition to the outlying areas, because Eureka High School does cover from Showers Pass out to Tompkins Hill. We attempted to do this last year. I believe it was approved last year. There was just an issue with being able to appropriately staff it. And so this is something that is of continuing interest to us, especially as we come down off of COVID and really support getting students back in schools and that positive relationship that we really need between law enforcement and our next generation.
Okay. Sheriff Hunsel, could you address the capability to staff the position for us?
Yes, I've been talking to Superintendent Fred Van Vleck on this. And as he said, this is a half year. So we're looking at next year, a year from now, to be able to staff that. And so I am supportive of this and optimistic that come January that we can staff a position. We are sending people to the academy and hiring people as fast as we can. And so, so I am in support of this application.
Okay. So just for my own clarity, you're saying that although the position would not actually be staffed until January of 2022, it would be appropriate to fund the halftime position in this current cycle.
Yes, that's the only way that we can make this work, is if we had Measure Z funding this cycle. And it was half funding, knowing that come January, that's when the position would start being funded essentially through Measure Z.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions committee members have regarding application number 7? Okay, Mr. Van Vleck, thank you for your time.
Thank you. I appreciate the time.
Application number 8, the EPD Mist and Uplift Program. Any questions from committee members? Do we have any participation from the public or from representatives of the?
Ginger has a comment or
Go ahead,
question.
Nicholas.
Ginger has a question.
Oh, Ginger, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I have a question. Is the chief online, or can I ask it to him, or?
Well, certainly. Let's see if he's here. Sean, can you tell us if your EPD representative is on the line?
Yep, Chief Watson is here, and I am just bringing him into the meeting.
I am present, members of the committee. Thank you. I also have Captain Stevens present as well, who has been instrumental in drafting this year's application and last. But go ahead with your question, and I'm sure between the two of us we can answer.
Okay, it's not a difficult question, but I did notice that some of the money that you're asking for is going to the Uplift program, if I'm correct. And in October last year, during the Measure H that was being the ballot, the city manager actually said in the North Coast Journal that a lot of the Uplift program would be funded through Measure H if it was passed. And so are you expanding the program, or is this you're hoping that one of them will kick in and that money will go to Uplift? Because it seems like it's 2 requests for the same thing to me.
So our request this year is virtually identical to our request in the previous year, when I believe we added a diversion program, a staff member, and I think another part-time homeless outreach worker. We're not asking for any more than we asked for last year. The city manager explained during last week's meeting that the city of Eureka, the money for Measure H, 1, won't be fully realized for some time, but 2 is earmarked to other deficits that the city has and needs. And so it remains a very vital component of our ability to field both our collaborative community safety engagement team and those 2 officers that have been longtime members of the team and funded by Measure Z, as well as our Uplift Eureka workers. So again, the coordinator, homeless services coordinator, the 2 HOW workers, and our diversion program member off the top of my head. And so the funding still is vital. I don't know at the moment where we'll be able to be in terms of expanding. I know in the future, the city hopes to be able to bring on mental health capability and some few other components that have not been realized yet. I do know we're in vital need of the existing funding that we're just asking for a repeat of this year. We very much appreciate the support of the committee and Measure Z over, well, more than 5 years now. Supported the MISS program initially and the expansions over the past several years, one of the longest serving programs under Measure Z. And I would certainly argue, and I think many people would agree, one of the most successful, because we really are an epicenter here in the greater Eureka area of homelessness, addiction, and mental illness. And that's what CSET and Uplift is really designed to address. And they made some real progress and some real partnerships with other organizations, including the nonprofits, DHHS, and we value that. And your support will be very much appreciated.
Thank you, Chief. Any other questions for Chief Watson or Captain Stevens while we have them?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I have a couple questions.
Go ahead, Justin.
Yeah, Chief Watson and Captain Stevens, first, thank you for your service. Could you guys elaborate a little bit more on I'm looking at the budget, the proposed budget right now, the $15,000 in requested funds for the stopgap funding, and then also talk a little bit about, as best you can, about the $10,000 requested for training. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to let Captain Stevens chime in on this one.
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. The stopgap funding has been vital to the success of CSET and the Uplift when it comes to many different aspects that they try to approach with the homeless population, or with them trying to get members of the public applications through the Uplift program. There are milestones they have to reach, and a lot of times these milestones start with obtaining legal documents, whether there are driver's license, birth certificates, divorce decrees. People can't obtain employment and can't obtain services without garnering those types of documents. So some of this money has been spent to help get those documents so we can get people off the street and get them employed. Some of this money has been spent to assist homeless individuals, get them into a hotel room for the night until we can get housing the following day. Things can't happen overnight. There are red tape and there are certain things we have to go through, but we can take them out of a situation or circumstance that maybe not be healthy for them, find them temporary shelter, and then get them into the proper placement afterwards. With COVID, we've used some of that money to buy ponchos for St. Vincent de Paul, because we had to change the way that they are fed, that the feeding time happens down there. They had to be outside, they had to be social distance. And when you do change among a community of people who are suffering from mental illness, it creates all types of different circumstances and challenges. So CSET spent and Uplift many hours down there every day since COVID started, and purchasing the ponchos was just one way of giving them some shelter, giving them some protection for the weather, so they still could obtain their meals and maintain social distancing outside. So there's a variety of things that money has gone to, but it has gone to always promoting the success and the welfare of those we're trying to help.
Thank you. And I would just add in on that before he answers the training question, but we can't just put these kind of things on a city credit card. And that's why it's kind of gap fill money. It really allows us to bridge the need there in a way that cuts through the red tape and do some real help right when it's needed for everything, again, from sometimes these temporary overnight shelter to ponchos and other needs. We've given masks, things like that, the documents and things like that, where they don't have the money. And if we have to wait to come up with the funds, sometimes a homeless person might be ready right now to make a change and to go to that appointment, that meeting, and start on the first step of the next journey of their life. And if we don't have the ability to have the resources immediately available to help them with that, and come back a few days later, maybe something's changed, they changed their mind, and we lost an opportunity.
And as far as training goes, we've talked about this in past applications. When we build in the cost of the 2 officer positions we have, we don't include all the costs that actually the City of Eureka and the Eureka Police Department encumbers with those positions. However, we don't have the ability to assist Uplift and their HAL workers with some of this vital training. So the money that's used for training is being used for those training classes that will assist them in their ability to recognize certain situations on the street, recognize how to deal with those, and make sure that they're providing the best service possible. The HAL workers are generally out there by themselves. A lot of times they're able to go out and make connections without us with them. And those connections are much more powerful because there's not that law enforcement presence there that sometimes may in somebody's mind create a barrier. So having them properly trained to recognize mental illness, to how to respond, how to de-escalate situations as they find themselves in those situations is very vital to the success of the program and also to their well-being. So we just ask that that training, we would like to see the training be maintained in our application so we can continue to increase their ability to take care of themselves and provide for the public.
Thank you.
I have a question, Chair.
Certainly. Go ahead, Ernie.
Chief Watson or Captain Stevens, this homeless is, and the problems that were in mental problems are a national problem, as I understand. They're everywhere. And I was just wondering, would you repeat again how much national money is coming into your program, or do you have any federal money?
I don't believe we're getting any money nationally, federal money related to the CSET. Well, from CSET, I know for sure. And Uplift, there's some state funding can be used for other elements of the program. I'm not in a position to be able to answer that question. I do know that everything that we're paying for right now in this application from last year, again, I've been told is just very much needed to continue the program without having to make cuts somewhere else. In terms of future expansion, that's where I think we're looking beyond Measure Z to if there's any other funding sources potentially out there, including at some point maybe some of the city's Measure H funding once, again, those other needs are met. But I think the city manager would have to speak more towards that element of the long-term goal. I just know as we sit into this coming fiscal year, the funding is just very much needed, and it's done a lot of good.
Well, I think on a national scale, everybody would say that this is a national problem. Is there any avenue that you can take to apply for federal money? Is there any grants out there for this sort of a program?
I can tell you that city staff regularly looks for any and all grant opportunities and applies for them religiously. In terms of the outcome or anything in the works right now today, I'm not aware of anything that would be able to replace Measure Z for us.
Well, am I correct in thinking that we might have an inordinate amount of people to take care of along with San Francisco and a few other areas? It seems like we're getting more than our share of the burden. I mean, don't get me wrong, you have a great program, okay? I'm trying to see how we might get some other funding without spending as much as we're spending on this program.
Yeah,
So
I believe go ahead, Captain Stevens.
I'm sorry. So I can't answer that. I know that Uplift gets grants for certain pieces of their program, such as housing. So there are grants, there are monies they've received for the housing portion of their program, which does not come out of the Measure Z funding. So they use the employees hired through Measure Z to implement their housing program and get those people into housing. So they do get grant monies, but that grant money is earmarked for specific parts of their program, like housing, other types of assistance, not to cover personnel costs, is my understanding of the process there.
Thank you.
Okay.
I have a comment, Chair Zemer.
Certainly.
Just to answer Ernie's question and to piggyback off of Captain Stevens and Chief Watson, you know, the League of Cities as well as CSAC is advocating for everything you're talking about, Ernie. And so they're looking at federal and state funding for programs like this. I do want to point out that, 5 years of investment, Measure Z investment has gone a long way in the MIST program. And so it's more than just the city. That DHHS and MIST and this whole thing has developed into a countywide program and protocol that really the sheriff's office and many other departments utilize because of the services that were initially set up and the process that were created by the Eureka Police Department is a model for county. And so we coordinate with DHHS and mental health a lot of the ways because of the groundwork that EPD has done. So just commenting that I fully support this and it's money well spent.
Okay, any other questions for the chief or the captain? Okay, gentlemen, thank you for your time.
Thank you for yours.
Chair Zima, Nicholas is trying to speak to the item.
I'm sorry, I didn't see you.
I had a yeah, I successfully muted myself. I had a question for Sheriff Hansel that kind of piggybacks this issue. In the past, I'd seen applications for a DHHS component for this program as well, and I'm wondering if that program has been kind of added into the county budget over all the general fund, or if something changed where they're not applying for funds from us.
You know what? I'm not sure as far as that's concerned. I know that they have many programs that are state funded through DHHS. And so, you know, this could be something that is federally or state funded right now. Without talking to Connie Beck, I really don't know. But I do know that they do leverage lots of social services for this kind of activity, you know, in various parts of the county. So it is something that is funded through DHHS's budget. Whether they get it through state or federal funding, I'm not sure.
Thank you. I'd see that as a win if that was part of a program that was able to start here and then move off these books.
Okay, any other comments on the application from EPD? Any other public members would like to speak to the EPD proposal? Okay.
Chair, we're going to reserve the public comment for the end after we get through all the applications.
Okay. Application number 9, the Fortuna Police Department Drug Task Force Officer. We did have a written response to a question I forwarded about the benefit costs, and it's responsive to the question, so I don't need any further discussion of that. Any other committee members have questions regarding the Fortuna DTF officer? Sheriff
I have a
Hansel?
question. Yes. Was Fortuna reducing their request by any amount?
Not that I've been made aware of. Mr. Quincey, did you have any information in that regard?
Yes. So you can see, can you guys see my screen there with the spreadsheet? So Fortuna has reduced their request for application number 9 from 185,000 to 173,422. There were, I was going to talk about this once we get to the ranking of the applications, but I guess this is a good place to talk about it also. So we had 2 applications here. Fortuna Police also reduced their SRO, and there were a couple other ones from Public Works that were reduced, but those were the only applications where we received revised budgets in the past week.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Certainly.
It also appears that, Sean, if Sean could confirm this for us, it appears that I see on the sheet here on the screen that application number 10 has been withdrawn. So it looks like we have 2 reductions from Fortuna Police Department on number 9 and 12. And if I'm seeing this right, number 10 has been withdrawn entirely.
That's correct. We just, we received word, I believe, Natalie, maybe you can help me. Was it today or yesterday that application was being withdrawn?
I believe we received that email yesterday, and that was in conjunction with his response to the other questions that were sent out for Fortuna.
Okay. Any further discussion of application number 9? And I guess we could talk about 12 at the same time. They're both for personnel positions. One's an SRO, one's a drug task force officer. Any committee questions in regard to those applications?
Yes, Mr. Chair, is Chief Casey Day available?
Mr. Quincey, would you see if he's available?
Yep, he is, and I'm pulling him in now. All right. Chief Day, if you can hear me, you are in the meeting, but you'll need to unmute yourself.
Which is *6, correct?
How's that? Can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Hey, good morning, committee. Chief Dave, Fortuna Police Department.
Chief Day, this is Justin Robbins, the vice chair. I just want to say, well, welcome to the meeting, and I don't believe we've met before. Could you tell the committee when you started as the chief of police there for the city?
Absolutely. So I came over to Fortuna Police Department in July of 2020. I was previously employed with the Anderson Police Department in Shasta County.
Thank you so much, sir. And I also just want to say, just thank you for the voluntary reductions and the removal of application number 11. And that's most appreciated from us here on the committee to kind of sort through the this incredible competition that we're dealing with. So Mr. Chair, I have no further questions. Just want to share my appreciation to Chief Day. Thank you.
Just for clarification, I believe the application that was removed was number 10, was it not? Not number 11?
Yes, Chair. Again, Chief Day, Fortuna Police Department. I just wanted to comment. I gave significant consideration to the amount of requests that were submitted this year. One of the determinations that I made was just respectfully withdrawing application number 10 in regard to the K-9. Fortuna Police Department's top priority is to maintain the ongoing Measure Z funding for our school resource officer and drug task force officer, which have been historically funded in full by Measure Z, as you know. In order to maintain these positions, which are already established, I did resubmit the budget, which was previously talked about by the committee for applications 9, that's DTF or drug task force, and application 12 for the school resource officer. So those resubmitted budgets were with the removal of what we had previously included as administrative or overhead amounts. I also have our finance manager, Aaron Filmley, available if there are any specific questions concerning the budget.
I think I know the answer, but I'm going to ask the question anyway. In the itemization that you provided of the roll-ups on the salary, what you're labeling the CalPERS required employer contribution is your UAL contribution, correct?
Again, Chair, I would defer to our finance manager on any questions regarding the budget.
Okay.
Yeah, Chair, I have a question.
Certainly, Ernie.
Was it number 12, the school resource officer withdrawn?
No, number 10, the
Okay.
K-9 officer in the amount of $50,000.
Right.
Number 9 and number 12, the amount requested was reduced.
Okay, all right, great. I was afraid they eliminated. Thank you.
I think Sean split his screen. You can see that.
Yeah, I see it now. I was looking at it and it disappeared.
Yep.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Chief Aday, anything else you'd like to mention while we have you with us?
No, I'd just like to thank the committee for the gift of your time this afternoon. Thank you very much.
Okay. Any other questions for the chief while he's with us?
I just want to, Chair Zemer, sorry, one more thing.
Sure,
Yeah, just confirm that Lindsay Frank is the school resource officer, and I've heard nothing but great things about her, Chief. I know you hear that all the time, but she not only does the schools in Fortuna, but she does all the county schools: Lolita, Hydesville, Carlotta, and so she really does an outstanding job. And again, not just Fortuna schools, but county schools. So thank you.
Okay. All right. Moving on then to item 11, which would be the Fortuna Police Department radio purchase. Any questions from committee members?
I had one question, Chair Zemer. Has Chief Day explored any outside funding for this purchase?
Is the chief still with us?
Yep, he's still in.
Chief, could you address Sheriff Hansel's question?
I can. To this point, Sheriff, we have not.
Okay. I might have some ideas, Chief, as well. If this doesn't get funded this year, I do have some ideas. Homeland Security money does fund stuff like this. It's not a lot of money, but it may be something that could help.
Thank you, Sheriff.
All right. Okay. Moving on then to application number 12, which is the SRO officer in the Fortuna Police Department. Any committee questions? Chief, would you like to make any comments while you're with us?
I'm sorry, I'm in Carmel and I couldn't hear that last part. Chair, can you please repeat the question? Hello?
Sheriff Hansel, did you hear a question directed to you?
No, Chief Day, we're just asking about, do you have any further comment on the SRO position?
Yes, I just wanted to make sure you guys can still hear me, Sheriff.
I can still hear you, yes.
Okay. I did want to address in similar fashion the question from the committee on combining applications. I think Chief Ahern put that in perspective as well, but I'm going to be very direct here with the committee. I don't see that as a very feasible solution. And I just kind of want to reiterate some comments that the sheriff said. You know, our school resource officer, Lindsay Frank, she services over 15 schools. Not just in Fortuna, but throughout the Eel River Valley. And she does that by herself. But the combination of the three applications, which were submitted by the committee, applications 12, 2, and 7, they deal with 3 separate school districts. And really an acute consideration that the committee needs to look at is the number of students that are being served in the different geographical locations throughout Humboldt County. And so I would like to submit that I wouldn't see it as a feasible solution to combine those applications, and they should remain separate.
Okay, thank you, Chief. Moving on, application 13 was determined by the committee to be non-eligible. So we'll move next to 14, which is a Garberville Redway Public Restroom Working Group. Any questions of committee members?
Chair, I believe this application was, number 14 was excluded as well.
Oh, I'm sorry, there was a binder clip over on my sheet. You're correct. My apologies. Number 15, Humboldt County Fire Chiefs Association. Any questions from committee members? Do we have a representative from the Chiefs Association who would like to address the committee?
Yeah, Chair, I do see somebody raising their hand, so I will go ahead and bring them into the meeting. All right. Last 4 numbers, 4951.
Correct. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Good
Hi,
afternoon. Welcome.
Welcome. Dale Unia, Samoa Peninsula Fire District, and I'm also the president of the Fire Chiefs Association. First, the association would like to thank the committee for all the support that you've given us in the last years and how you guys have streamlined the process of picking applications that are worthy. We've also done the same within the association. We gave you guys a $2 million amount this year when we did a survey to all of our fire districts of almost $2.6 million worth of needs. The Humboldt County Fire Chiefs is comprised of 38 fire districts or fire companies throughout the county. Within that, there is 597 volunteers, 331 support personnel out of those 38 departments. Excluding CAL FIRE and any federal fire, there's only 75 paid firefighters within the county. So we think as the Fire Chiefs Association, we give a lot to the county and to our communities that we're just really asking for the equipment to do our jobs. We get up during the middle of the night to go out and serve our communities. And it is just important that we have the right equipment and PPE to do it right. As you can see through the list that I gave you, that it's very conservative of what we really need. And at a $2 million ask, that's only 16% of the $12.5 million that is supposed to be coming in from Measure Z revenues. Once again, I'd just like to thank you guys. And do you have any questions?
Any committee members have questions for the chief while he's with us?
Mr. Chair, I have a question for the chief.
Certainly, Justin.
Thank you, Chief. My question is, the request that we're seeing is, on page 1 of the application is for $2 million. And
Correct.
as you were referencing a little bit ago, the on the budget, it's the total is 2.68 million. If it's true that you're requesting just 2 million of that 2.68, what of the itemized budget here is being removed to balance that 2.68 million down to 2 million?
Well, we've done it a little bit different this year, so we can have a little bit more flexibility, because in years past, we've sort of picked like last year, we picked tools, extrication tools. And yet some companies might need more PPE, or with the fires that were down in southern Humboldt, there's a lot of hose and appliances that need to be done. So that's why we've done it a little bit different. And we will come back to you next year and tell you exactly what we spent the money on, because it's very easy. It's all tangible objects that are, physical. So we'll pick and choose who needs what by what priority it needs. Always is PPE. I mean, you got to be wearing the right stuff just to do our job.
Chair, I'd like to say something.
Ernie, go ahead.
Yeah. See, Dale, I want to compliment you guys. I know that you probably have more volunteers, very skilled volunteers, than any other organization asking for money here. And I admire the fact that you're spending the majority of this money on stations, trucks, equipment, PPE, and needed products that are essentially durable goods. They're more than just 1 year and they're gone. You're actually investing in the future. And I think that it's a darn good investment to give you that $2 million. And I appreciate you reducing your needs, but come back next year and fill those needs. Thank you.
And that's one of the things that we're trying to focus on this year again, is that we've gotten a lot of great equipment, and there is some needs to get it maintained. And so I didn't put it into the budget layout, but I would like to throw like some money towards maintenance and make sure that this equipment lasts throughout the life of it, and make sure that it gets all the use that possibly can.
Okay, any other questions for the chief?
Yeah, just a follow-up question, if I can. If that's the case, can we see that on the budget?
Yeah, I know, SCBA's, it costs $75 per year per testing, and I have 16 of them. But yes, I could break that down throughout all the equipment that we have, or that we have purchased, and get you those numbers.
I appreciate that, sir. And just one follow-up question. Could you elaborate a little bit more on the out-of-district response? It's the second item on the breakdown budget, the out-of-district response 299 Maple Creek. Help us understand in the committee what that's about. Thank you, sir.
In 2011, I called one of the chiefs that are a recipient of this, and he was there through the history of this. And it's the 299 Maple Creek corridor. Blue Lake, Willow Creek, and Nealon were going out of their district to patrol and to run to incidents on the 299 corridor more than they were inside their district. And so their taxpayers were getting concerned that they were running their equipment out of their district. And so those three entities came to the county and asked them for funding for this. And if you've ever listened to county fire radio, you'll know how many incidents are on that corridor. And so the county granted this money, and then when Measure Z came along, I forget which board of supervisor said this is a perfect avenue for the funding to go to. We don't believe so as the Fire Chiefs Association, but I mean, it is what it is, and we'll manage it the way we can.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, any other questions for the chief? Okay, thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Next would be number 16, the Humboldt County Public Defender Integration Document Filing System. Any committee members have questions or clarifications? Anyone representing the Public Defender's Office like to speak to this?
I don't see anybody with their hands raised.
Okay.
Chair.
Thank you. Number 17, Humboldt County Public Works chip seal request. Originally requested at 250,000, recently reduced to 125,000. Any committee members have questions? Any representative of Public Works Department like to speak to this application?
Yep. Hold
Yes,
on, I see.
Director Tom Matson.
Yes, Tom.
Good afternoon, Chairman and members of the committee. If you would like, I could run through all of mine, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then unless you want to separate them out.
I think it would be efficient for you to do that.
So we took, like Fortuna, we took a look at the bigger picture of oversubscription of Measure Z. I actually have over $200 million in documented deferred maintenance on county roads. I'm not going to ask for the entire amount. We took a look at this year and looked at, basically the amount asked for was double what was available. So of the ones that are scalable, we scaled them back in half. That would be the chip seal, the illegal dumping, and the PSAs. Note that on all of those are just asking for components. Well, it's about 25,000 a mile for the oil and the prep for a chip seal. It's actually about 45,000 when you add our equipment and materials, our equipment and our personnel time in order to do those projects. Under the signal, we reduced our engineering time, but please note that usually our engineers on the projects they work on, they bill to those projects. Most of the state and federal money that we use for capital projects includes covering our staff time. So we are willing to funding that staff time out of our maintenance fund, just again, to reduce the impact on this year's request. Illegal dumping, similarly, we do spend about 100,000 a year. We've reduced our request by half, and as well as the PSAs. And note that on the PSAs, we get about a 4-to-1 return based on the rate that we are charged for our so-called advertising. We get charged about 20% of what the market rate is for advertising, as the radio station we work with does support us moving forward with PSAs to keep the public safety notices going. So if there are any questions, I can answer those. But in total, we've reduced our request by 253,000.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Madsen. Any committee members have any questions on applications 17 through 20 inclusive?
I have
a question.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, Ginger, I think I heard you first.
Well, Tom, I have a question on the F and Oak Street light. Has there been any looking into possibly, instead of a light, putting those great big huge flashing stop signs on the four-way stop there? They're about $978 a piece, I know, but and not installed, but just to buy. And down in Fortuna, they had two places where there was a lot of problems and accidents and injuries and stuff, and they put those signs up, and it made just a significant, huge difference. So has anything else been looked at, or is this the final request after looking at all?
We looked at no parking, and that was not approved by our board. We looked at the four-way stop sign. That works when traffic is more equivalent on each leg, but you're talking about 10,000 vehicles a day on F Street and 200 on Oak, and backing up all of that traffic and have everybody to stop every single time. That's not a good traffic engineering solution at all. And I think it would make the traffic in the neighborhood even worse than it is. So we are not recommending the stop sign approach. The signal approach is similar to what we did at Walnut and Fern, where most of the traffic is on Walnut, but it's only triggered on the side street when a vehicle pulls up or somebody pushes the button across the street. That way the traffic can still move without causing major congestion, and we can eliminate the crashes we have and prevent future crashes.
Okay, thank you.
I heard another question, but I couldn't identify who it was from.
It's Chair Zemer, Sheriff Hansel.
Yes, go ahead.
Tom, we've had Measure Z for about 5 years now. Can you just let us know how much money have you actually received from Measure Z over that last 5 years?
Unfortunately, I don't have the running total. It's several $1,000,000 so far, but we have never in the past asked for capital project funding like we are this year. It's all been going into maintenance, but this is a pretty significant crash history here at this intersection, and we just feel it really needs a signal, even though it doesn't meet the grants that we normally would get, the safety grants for the Highway Safety Improvement Program, because the benefit to cost ratio is not going to be there until there's a fatality, and we would really prefer not to wait for a fatality to be able to qualify for funding.
Absolutely. Thank you. I support that.
At the risk of being naive, I was always skeptical of the roundabouts, but now that I experience them on a daily basis and so on, I assume your staff looked at a roundabout and decided that the proposal that you made was a more appropriate address of that particular situation. Is the cost an issue, or is the roundabout
It's not just
Go ahead.
A roundabout. We love roundabouts. I'll start off with that, because once you build them, there are no costs to maintain them, basically. However, at this location, there's the right of way is just too constrained. Okay. We would have to basically buy out properties, and the cost of that would be astronomical, and the public blowback probably even more astronomical.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, I have a question for Director Mattson.
Yes, Mr. Robbins.
Hey, thanks, Tom, for participating. Hey, I understand the need to actually thank you for the voluntary reduction, and I want to put in a plug to increase the amount of chip seal. You just cited a number of the true cost is $45,000 per mile, and a mile per supervisory district seems woefully insufficient, and I'll have to convince you of that. But in essence, what I'm asking for is to this application to be increased back to $225,000 for a symbolic 1 mile per district. That should be chip sealed. And to my committee members, once again, I appreciate Director Mattson doing this. This is in essence the good thing to do, the right thing to do to reduce these given the money. And just want to put that plug in for the roads department. Roads are critical. It's critical for our safety, and I'm of the personal belief that it's some of the best investment that Measure Z can be had for the county to make us all safer. So, Tom, if that's something that what's your response to basically what I'm saying there? Is that would you like to see that increased if you could?
I would always scale up versus scale down. It's it's basically in $25,000 increments. And again, we looked at the oversubscription by double of the amount available. So we wanted to be as reasonable as we could, but still get some additional funding. This is not the only chip seals that we'll be doing next year, just the ones funded by Measure Z. We have an additional 10 or 15 miles that we're funding out of our baseline budget as well. But if the committee would be willing to increase it, we would greatly support that if it's in $25,000 increments, because we can't really get a half truck load of oil. So,
Tom, just
yes,
one
I
follow
would
up if I
appreciate it.
thank you, Tom. Just one follow up if I may. Give the committee an idea of the revenue streams from the gas tax increase. How's that shaping up for the current fiscal year and projections for next fiscal year?
Well, let's first start out. Before the gas tax increase, we were deferring about $15 million a year in maintenance. Now we're deferring about $10 million in maintenance. So SB1 generates about $5 million, a little bit less. It's pretty much below, of course, where it was projected to be because of COVID. Our gas tax revenues are generally around $5 million a year. They've been coming in low as well due to COVID. And we're one of the few counties that we actually get an increment of the property tax. That's about $2.5 million a year to roads. And then we have various other minor funding sources, such as the exchange regional state transportation program funding that we exchange for state funds. It's about $600,000 a year. Timber tax can vary greatly from 100,000 to 400,000 or 500,000, and then secure rural roads, secure rural schools is the funding source. That has gone down drastically, but we still get right now about 400,000 a year through that. But that's a political fight in Washington every time it's reauthorized, because most of it goes to the western states and the eastern states try to knock it down. So that's always on the chopping block. And then we used to get TDA funding, which goes to transit to the tune of about 750,000 a year, but all of that now is going to transit.
Thanks, Director Maxson. Thank you, Chair.
Director Mattson, I have a question for you. Would you elaborate on the scalability of the different projects, particularly the one for the traffic signal? Because I know in the past, Public Works has always been able to scale revenues up or down, or I should say projects up or down based upon the revenue that's given. And how would that work for a project like the traffic signal?
Well, that's a bit different because it's a permanent fixed one-time cost. And anything that was reduced below that would directly have to come out of maintenance. And right now, we just don't have the funding. Generally, all of our capital projects are funded outside of maintenance, with maintenance only providing the small federal share, which is usually around 11%. And I think if you look at that 73,000, it's probably a bit more than 11% that we would be funding internally for this project.
All right. And lastly, I do want to chime in that in prior years, one of the things that the Measure Z committee had historically done was any mid-year offsets. Those were granted toward road maintenance projects. Could you further explain how beneficial those mid-year allocations are to the department?
They're actually pretty critical. Usually by that time, we're running very low on money and looking forward to June 1st. The money that comes mid-year allows us to get a jump on construction early in the season in spring and get a lot more work done through the whole entire year versus running in the spring when you have good weather, April, May, June, and not being able to do any real heavy intensive maintenance projects, being able to get out there and actually do chip seals and culvert replacements for a full 6 months from April through October, rather than only starting with July 1st funding and basically ending in October when the weather changes.
Chair Zemer.
Thank you.
I have a question for Mr. Mattson. Tom, First off, it's apparent that the only thing that'll work on F Street is a stop sign or stop light rather, a signal system. But I agree with the cost benefit ratio is way out of proportion. Is there any other funding that can come into this? Is there any neighborhood funding that's going on? Anybody that wants to help fund this? Because I would like to see a partner in this. That's an awful dent in Measure Z. I'm not as generous as Justin, but I was hoping that there might be some other funding somewhere because that's an enormous amount to spend on lights.
Well, the signals are not cheap. That's just a fact of life. It's, we look for our primary source is the 8-cent. This project does, even with only Measure Z, does still have a 2-to-1 benefit to cost ratio. Unfortunately, when we compete statewide, we're looking at areas that do have a lot higher numbers of fatalities and severe injuries. So we can't even climb into that range. I think this year's 8-cent program is going to be cut off at a benefit cost ratio of 12.5-to-1, which is, greatly higher than the 3.5-to-1 that they allowed even to apply. And so we always look everywhere we can. The only other place we have to fund this is out of maintenance, and we just don't have the dollars to do that.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Mattson? Okay, Mr. Mattson, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on then, we would be at applications 21, 22, and 23, which are the Sheriff's Department. Any committee members have questions they'd like to address or direct to the sheriff regarding number 21, 22, and 23?
There were some questions, Chair Zemer, that were posed. I can attempt to answer those.
I was going to give them an opportunity to elaborate, but at this point, it's your vacation time. Burn it up.
All right, thank you. There's never really a vacation, but anyway, as far as body-worn cameras goes, it's something that, well, first off, let me just say, I am cognizant of one thing, and that is that the Sheriff's Office takes up a bulk of Measure Z funding. Close to $5 million of Measure Z goes to the Sheriff's Office and allocates 30 some odd positions and does a lot of great in this community because of Measure Z. And so I'm cognizant of that. And one of the questions, posed is, why is the Sheriff's Office asking for more when they really take up a lot of this money? And the reason is, like everyone else, we're short money. The county's short money. I try to ask for these requests last year for a regular budget process, and due to COVID, we weren't able to get anything funded. And this year is going to be the same circumstance for our budget. So I'm approaching this committee as an opportunity to put this in front of the Board of Supervisors to try and get some funding for these programs that I think are vital to the Sheriff's Office. So first off is the body-worn cameras. Body-worn cameras are a part of normal operations for a lot of departments, and it's becoming the industry standard across the board. I see it and recognize it, and we need body-worn cameras at the Sheriff's Office. It is something that the deputies want, administration wants, the county wants, and the people want. The problem is body-worn cameras are cheap. That's not the issue. Buying the cameras is not the issue. It is having the personnel to process all the video and provide the videos for public records requests, as well as the district attorney's office, as well as internally. And so I have to have actually staffed positions in order to get the body-worn cameras. So that is what I'm asking for in this request, and to fund the positions so I can have that program. The second thing is our dispatch center. We did basically a staffing study for our dispatch center to try and attempt the feasibility study for a consolidated dispatch for countywide dispatching of fire, police services, and those kind of thing. One of the things they identified is the sheriff's office is understaffed for the existing call volume. And so what I'm asking for is to get essentially for staffing to manage the existing call volume so we can start actually looking at a consolidated dispatch model sometime in the future. As we've seen, the need for dispatching county fire is one of those things that, that we want to eventually have the opportunity to bid. We haven't had that opportunity because we don't have the staffing or the infrastructure. And so that's something that I'm working on with the county. This just gets us more towards that ability in the future to be able to offer that service. And so that's something that I definitely want to do. And then the radio infrastructure is something as far as countywide. It's public works. It's public safety agencies are dealing with a failing infrastructure. The county has allocated about $6 million for this infrastructure. There are some cost overruns, and so this will be covering those cost overruns to the tune of $542,000. Last year, this committee approved this funding. That if there was any extra, the board they recommended that the board fund this. There was extra this year, and the board decided not to fund this program. So they chose to fund other things. So I want to put this in front of the board again as a reminder that the county needs to finish this project. Radio, emergency, broadcasting, everything is so important for our county in the event of a catastrophic event, emergency, or day-to-day operations countywide. That is from Shelter Cove all the way to Orleans. So it's very, very important. And this money, the $6.5 million that the county is going to put forward, will completely digitize our radio system for public works, for some fire services, as well as public safety.
Okay. Any questions for the sheriff?
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Mr. Bronco.
Oh,
Sheriff Hansel?
Bob, did you want to go?
Sure, I'll go first. Sheriff, it would seem at a high level that consolidating all the dispatch for police, sheriff, fire throughout the greater county would potentially result in a tremendous cost savings to all these entities that are essentially duplicating services of sorts. And by being able to get that consolidation done, perhaps that's a way that would ultimately free up more funds for fire, for police, etc. And I would strongly encourage you to proceed with that implementation as a long-term way of ultimately better serving the taxpayers as well as saving the taxpayers money. Thank you.
Bob, if I could just address that, I completely agree. It's something that I've been trying to work towards, and the feasibility study is the first step. And the thing is, the study says it can be done. It's going to take some work. It's going to take commitment. And so I am definitely dedicated towards that. And I believe consolidation really is the key to saving taxpayer money and prioritizing. Duplicating effort is something that is going on right now. And that's something that I think we can work towards, but it's going to take one step at a time, one bite of the apple at a time. So this is our first step.
Okay, any other comments for the sheriff or questions?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I have a comment and a question. Let me start with my comment first, and this is to all committee members. And I believe that proposal number 23 should be our top priority to the Board of Supervisors, given what we've just heard and our support, this committee's support for that project for last year and how it wasn't funded. So just a personal opinion that I think that should be our top priority. And a question to Sheriff Hansel, well, two questions. Sheriff Hansel, if you had to scale the application number 21 body worn cameras, how would you do that? And then my second question is, and dispatchers have a special place in my heart. I've worked with so many great dispatchers over the years. I'm just curious, how confident do you feel about being able to recruit and get people to fill those positions? I personally was pleased to see this effort of the sheriff's office. Can you share some thoughts on you talked a lot in the past about the challenges of recruiting deputies.
Yeah.
Does that extend to dispatchers as well? Thank you.
Yeah, a couple things is scalable. The body worn cameras is not scalable. It's an all or nothing thing because it requires that personnel in order to have the program. I can't have one or the other. And so that is an all or nothing. And I understand if it's a lower priority, and I get it. And I just want it to be able to be an option for the Board of Supervisors eventually. As far as dispatch, I'm pleased to say that our dispatch center is fully staffed. And that was because our Board of Supervisors did prioritize and actually raise some of the salary of last year, and we became very competitive in our dispatch center. And so it is fully staffed. We have approval to hire extra help staffing right now. And so I'm very confident that we can recruit and retain some good dispatchers in the future.
Thank you so much.
Any other questions from the committee for Sheriff Hansel?
I've got a question.
Scott, go ahead.
Okay, right now, I believe the fire departments, especially the rural fire departments, with the exception of the Arcata, well, actually Arcata Fire District is now, it's being dispatched by Caltrans or Cal Fire out of Fortuna. Would money that Cal Fire and Fortuna gets for dispatching the rural fire departments end up going to this new dispatch center?
So Cal Fire, to my knowledge, does have the contract to dispatch County Fire as well as Arcata Fire. So in the future, if I was able to, I would have to compete for that contract, but I would have to have the system in place in order to be able to be competitive in that process.
Yeah, understood. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions for Sheriff Hansel? Okay, moving on. I believe application 24 was deemed by the committee to be non-eligible. So we'll go to 25, which is the Willow Creek Ambulance Base. Any committee questions? Does the applicant have a representative that would like to make any comments?
Mr. Chair, if the applicant's available, I'd like to ask a question.
Okay. Mr. Quincey, do we have a representative of the Willow Creek Ambulance application available?
If they are in the meeting, could you raise your hand, please? I'm not seeing anybody in the meeting raising their hand right now, Chair.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chair, if I may, the questions I would ask to the applicant is can the dues and subscriptions cost for DirecTV, can that be removed? What are the licenses and permits for $1,250, and what are the purchase services for $1,000? And what I'm getting at is that I definitely fully support this. I support this application, the intent, and just looking for some cost savings here in terms of the budget. So there appear to be some things on here that I'm not seeing as essential, and would very much like to hear from the applicant submitted in terms of why they believe they're essential. So it's just not my bias. Thank you.
Okay. I'm seeing a prompt in the chat box to indicate that we do have a representative.
Yep, Chair, and it looks like I believe it's Mr. Stake. You're in the meeting. You can address the committee.
Good afternoon.
Yes,
Welcome.
Thank you. I heard the one question in regard to the DirecTV, and speaking with Rod Johnson, the ambulance manager. The reason for that cost is it's actually the internet services and connectivity, and it's how they do trainings up there at the ambulance base. So it's not just flipping through cable, but it's all their connectivity at the Willow Creek ambulance base.
Thank you, sir. I was wondering as much, but want to get clarification. Could you clarify as well, sir, the as best you can, the budget line for licenses and permits, and the budget line for, well, I guess the purchase services is for uniform services. But in essence, what I'm getting at is there any cuts that can be made to specific budget line items to try to get you as much funding as possible?
Yeah, so Probably the best way that I would answer this is that last year we had, if you're looking at the Willow Creek Ambulance and Humboldt County Services, we still had a $47,000 shortfall, which we stepped in to provide beyond what we were able to obtain through revenue and through Measure Z. And so the reason why we put in the increase this year was twofold. One, because of the shortfall last year, and then two, because we're having an incredible time trying to recruit and retain our staff. Our EMT salaries at current, we have some that are as low in the 12s, like roughly $12 an hour, and then for our paramedics somewhere around 16, upper end of 17. If you look out at the coastline, that their EMTs are closer to 15 and going upwards of closer to 20 with sign-on bonuses. And if we don't compete, we will not have an ambulance crew. And obviously it's even more difficult to recruit and retain in rural areas. And so that was the reason for the increase in the budget, were primarily because of increase in salaries. And it wasn't due so much from the line item increases, other than trying to actually retain our staff.
Thank you, Dr. Stake. Can you, just one more follow-up question, if I may, that when you were speaking about the budget shortfall last year, did your center have basically more medical issues to respond to than than your average number of responses?
Can you rephrase that so that I make sure I answer it correctly, what your question is?
I'd be happy to. I'm just curious if this last fiscal year, or even the current time we're in now, are you seeing more incidences to respond to than what your historic average is?
Our historic averages are pretty close to the same in regard to ambulance. Where we've seen increases are in overdoses and our ambulance responding to those overdose situations. In addition, in our detailed report, in the application, we put in a few paragraphs on COVID-19 and kind of defined them as at-risk situations in which our paramedics are entering into situations where a person has upper respiratory type of issues and COVID related. And so that information was provided in there as well. But outside of kind of the normal numbers from year to year, we haven't seen too much variation other than those main two items.
Dr. Stake, may I ask one more question, sir?
Sure.
If I'm just reading, I haven't read through the whole stimulus bill that was just passed by the U.S. Congress and to be signed by the president here very soon. What's the feeling, I guess, of yourself and your co-workers there of the center in terms of federal dollars coming for the medical center after will any of those stimulus dollars potentially be coming to the medical center? And what's your take on that? Thank you.
Yeah, potentially. In the last stimulus that we had received through the medical center, there were additional monies that came through Indian Health Services. And then we have also done our best to apply for different grants. Honestly, as an administrator, it's been it's a good thing that there's additional funding, but it's also been really challenging. There's a balance of it, and I'll be up front. We received roughly around $900,000 through IHS for additional services towards testing, and that has been budgeted towards like extra lab person. We're doing an outside vaccination clinic today for the community. So that's paying for all of our staff because we aren't getting the revenue that's normally generated through clinic visits. And so thankfully, hopefully by the end of today, we'll have 200 more people, vaccinated within HOOPA due to our community outreach. And so there's been a lot more focus on community outreach, and those monies have actually been fully budgeted to the clinic. And to be quite frank, I don't want to paint a dire picture because we're doing well and we're excited about the services we provide, but we also have roughly around 23 vacancies at Kamau Medical Center, and that's because we're needing to we need to increase the salaries. We need to do more to be able to recruit people to our area and to be able to help out. So while there is stimulus money that would hopefully be coming to us, generally speaking, that gets budgeted really quickly, and across the river within the tribal council and the monies that they're working with, those are depleted fairly quickly as well. It is something, it was a great question that was a follow-up question by the committee in regard to purchasing rigs. That's something that we have been looking at, and we hadn't had the money up front to be able to purchase rigs, ambulance rigs that we would maintain, with it at Kamau, and hopefully be able to lessen the fleet cost of those services. And so we would be really, I don't know. I'm hoping that the new stimulus and in that $1.9 trillion that they can find it somewhere to support more medical and ambulance, and that we can get an inflow. And certainly I think if that were to happen, then we would be honorable to Measure Z and be looking to possibly return those funds if there were something that came down the line to us that was able to cover ambulance. As of right now, that hasn't been guaranteed. There are consultation meetings that go on with the tribes, and we haven't been guaranteed or told how much we'll receive, like in what amount, and also what limitations those funds will have on them.
Dr. Stake, I appreciate what you shared with us, and thank you so much for your time and your service.
Sure, thank you.
Any other questions for the representative from the ambulance service?
Dr. Stake, thank you for working toward providing critically needed ambulance service way out in the hinterland. Those sorts of services are absolutely critical to ensure that people who are in dire need of transport are able to go ahead and receive that kind of service. The question I have for you is related to, I guess you call it the unique nature of ambulances, which is typically where patients are paying for the service or a portion of the service, and how there is this uniqueness of requesting Measure Z money, but then there's potentially this offset of revenue coming in from patients who then are paying for it. And if you could elaborate on how that equation balances to zero, I would greatly appreciate any insight that you could offer on that. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll answer as best as I can. One is that we don't set the rates of those billing rates and what we charge. Number two, that in a dire emergency, you don't check whether a person has insurance and whether they can actually going to be able to provide for that on the back end. And so there are limitations in what we can do. I will say that we advocate every year to Indian Health Services to actually fund ambulance service delivery, and that would be of exponential help. And who knows, maybe if Indian Health Services gets some more money through stimulus or with a different administration, that their funds increase and that they would consider having ambulance services as a service that we can get through our IHS compact monies that we receive. And then we also advocate to Health and Human Services within the state of California to increase the rates at which we can get reimbursed. And so we're advocating, but I don't know how to internally change those of, like, for instance, if the vast majority of all of our persons are paying off of like Medi-Cal rates, it's not something that we set internally. That's set outside of us.
Right. I realize your income is based on insurance and people's ability to go ahead and pay. I was looking at how much revenue is being generated from that activity, because as part of your Measure Z application, if I'm reading this one correct, I know there were a couple ambulance ones, so I might be mixing your application with another one, is one of the applications is requesting funding for a biller to go ahead and bill patients to go ahead and generate revenue. And
Oh,
I
sure.
was more interested in how much revenue does the ambulance go ahead and contribute toward
Sure.
offsetting the cost of providing the service.
Right, I did see that. There was a follow-up question from the committee. It said, how much revenue did ambulance company receive from services billed from patients from fiscal year 2019, 2020? And I did send that back. It's $224,000, or $224,053 in revenue in 2019-20 fiscal year.
And then one last follow-up question. What is the total cost of providing the ambulance service as you have it now?
Let's see if I can find and this is particularly for Willow Creek, Humboldt County is $623,042. This is for so we partitioned it. So Willow Creek ambulance base, the total operating cost is $669,938. If you partition it to just Humboldt County calls, it's slightly less at $623,042.
And it was about 240K of revenue?
Correct. $224,000 in revenue.
So it sounds like the shortfall for the program is roughly 420K per year. That's the
right. So
deficit
that's right. That 46,000 shortfall was with the Measure Z funding last year. So that's what so the revenue plus Measure Z funding still resulted in a $47,000 shortfall last year. And that's why we increased the requested amount for this year. And when we were asked if we could decrease, by yesterday, submit a revised budget, we decided not to, and just to keep in the full amount.
All right, perfect, thank you.
Okay, any other questions regarding the Willow Creek Ambulance Service? Okay, thank you for your time, sir.
Thank you.
Next would be the Loleta Community Chamber of Commerce request. Any committee questions in regard to this application? And is there a representative of the Loleta Chamber of Commerce available that would like to speak to this application?
Yeah, Chair, I see Brenda Juarez, and I brought you into the meeting if you'd like to
Yes,
speak to the
hi.
committee.
Can everyone hear me?
Welcome.
Hi. Yeah, so first things first, sorry about not joining the last meeting. It was a mistake on my behalf. But yeah, I tried to answer the questions, and then upon thinking of the first question that we received of why the chamber was asking for the money, I thought maybe it could have been asked in another way in terms of like, why not another entity? And if it was in that way, I think because there is no other entity. I just started joining a board. I joined the chamber about a year ago, and I have joined a few other boards that we have around town. And it just doesn't seem like there's anyone that asks for anything for our community as a whole. And so therefore I just thought, well, if this chamber, if the chamber gave me permission to go ahead and ask on behalf of us, then I would go ahead and start asking through the Chamber of Commerce, and they said yes. And so I moved forward with the application.
Okay, any committee members have any specific questions for Ms. Juarez?
Yes, Chair, I do.
Okay, Mr. Robbins.
Hey, Ms. Juarez, just two questions for you. In your broken out budget, you are requesting $10,000 to keep a public park open. Who is the owner of that park? Who owns the land?
So to what I've understood, and so I kind of just want to give you guys a little bit of background. So as I said, I've been in the chamber now for a little bit over a year. And then, I've joined the school board and the water district and volunteered at the fire department. And so I'm starting to just kind of learn what is where, what falls under who. And it seems like the park does fall under the Chamber of Commerce. I don't know necessarily if we own the land, and those are questions that I can ask on our next board meeting, which is Friday, and get answers for you. But we are the ones who pay the insurance for it and try and do maintenance on the park and try and get funding for any of the not the toys, but the playground and so on and so forth. So we're kind of we get those funds through our community celebrations or through the antique show or yearly things that we have to raise money, which didn't happen last year due to COVID. And we also have like yearly dues that that the town, sends in to help the community, and we pull out of that budget and so on and so forth.
Thank you, Ms. Juarez. A follow-up question, if I may. And you may not be able to answer this right now, given that you have a chamber meeting at the end of this week, but what's most important to you in the chamber to get funded? You have a request here for $500,000.
Yeah.
If I may say so, that's unlikely to be funded at that amount. What's truly important to the Lolita community? What's your highest priority to get funded out of everything you're requesting? Thank you.
So I do think that when I think of everything that the community goes through and has just recently gone through, I think that the sheriff deputy would be number one, 100% number one. And sorry, Sheriff Hansel, you're gonna have like a voicemail from me when you get back on Monday, and one from your secretary as well, because I have called just recently to try and speak to you about this and just how this works. So yeah, just so you guys know, I'm very new to all of this. I, just left my career 4 months ago and have just started jumping into how I can help the community, how we can get things going and moving forward. And so I'm very new to all of this. I write down question after question trying to answer myself. So I think the deputy would be number one, because I think right now a lot of people do feel scared. We feel like, just right now there's a truck dumped in our park, and now there's been another truck just left at the highway exit. Every week there's a new car dumped in town somewhere. We have old buildings that get broken into, and things like signs that get taken that people really valued because we're keeping there just because of it's old and trying to keep the historic side of it, and people just take things and leave things and trash our town. And so I think having someone that would patrol more would help people stop just thinking of Lolita as their dump town, and help the rest of the community also feel a little bit safer, because we just have like a Lolita community watch, and that's how we kind of say like, hey, there's somebody walking around town, and just lock your cars and this and that. But there's gas being siphoned, there's cars being broken into, and it's like, it's kind of hard to say, oh, well, I'll just call 911, because really by the time they get here, there's not much to be done. So there's that. So that was a great question, and I do think that would be number one and ideal. And as you said, I'm very aware, and when I brought up to the board of asking for this money, they all smiled and said, Brenda, we love that you dream, and good luck, and try your best. And so that is part of it. And if I'm able to share with you guys what I think would be next, would be any kind of money that goes towards the school. And I think I can try and share my best to my ability, but the school also does a great job at providing help for victims of child abuse, and they try and educate the students on drug abuse and the health regarding of that. We have a counselor that's there 3 days a week, and we're trying to get one there 5 days a week. The school just does so much for our community, and I think it starts with our youth. If we're able to educate our youth and really work with them, then it helps us not have to find a drug treatment program in the future, not have to find these funds in the future. So instead of waiting till things get bad and then trying to put band-aids on it and fix these things, just giving our students and our youth the resources to really make the difference and the change now, rather than wait till it's bad and try and fix it then. So
Brenda,
Okay.
thank you so much for your energy.
thank you.
Okay, as far as thank you for
Justin,
any
I
other
have an
questions?
answer to your question. The owner of the property where the park site is at is the Northwestern Pacific Railroad Company.
Oh.
Good luck
Which is
on-
interesting, you know, because I just saw a state senator Zoom meeting regarding the railroad, the Redwood Railroad Trail that's supposed to go through town, I guess. But that's another thing, you know, on their map, they show Fortuna, they show Eureka. And I'm like, again, what about Lolita? And do we need to start fixing things? I know that that's going to be a long project, but it's also going to take us a long time to get where we need to be. Right now, we only have the post office, the market, and the meat market open. And so we would love to be able to fix up our town and have safe looking trails. We have a trail now that, I mean, looks lovely, but I don't want to walk alone there with my child, you know? So I think that Lolita just needs to be given the chance and the opportunity and the help to get where we need to be. So yeah.
All right.
Thank
Well,
you.
thank you. Thank you for your contribution today.
Chair Zemer, I have one question and comment.
Sir, I was going to get to you and ask you about the staffing capability.
Yes. For one, Brenda, it's the first time I'm talking to you. Thank you. Thank you for your energy and your willingness to get involved and putting this application together. It was, you know, it was very, very nice. And, you know, we love seeing people engaged in trying to make their community better. So thank you for that. I want to bring a couple things to your attention. One is I've been working with the Table Bluff Rancheria and the Weop tribe, and we actually have a funding source for a deputy. And as soon as we get up to staff this next year, they plan on paying for Eel River Valley deputy, which will include Lolita area. So that is a good thing. When we talk on Monday, I'm going to talk to you about our problem-oriented policing units and things that we can do to try and take care of some of those issues that you have within the Lolita, and also introduce you to Ginger Campbell, who's on the screen, because she's a part of our neighborhood watch and she does some really, really good things. So so we're gonna work with you on those community concerns. I want to let you know up front that this is going to be I'm not going to recommend fully prioritizing this funding because there's some other things that are higher priority, but the needs of Lolita can be taken care of without having Measure Z funding this year. I just want to let you know that, Brenda. I'm looking forward to working with you to address those things.
Awesome. Thank you.
All
You're
right.
welcome.
Thank you.
I have a quick comment.
Certainly.
Brenda, thank you very much for putting this forward. I very much appreciate your point of view and where you're sitting. One thing that I would like to share with you is this committee has a history of fully funding applications. So we really don't go in and make recommendations to the Board of Supervisors about what parts of applications to fund. So if you want to use this in the future, I would recommend multiple applications for different programs.
Okay. Thank you so much for that.
All right. Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Okay, moving on to application 27, the Redwood Parks Conservancy application for a seasonal lifeguard. Any questions from community members? I believe we have a representative available to us. So Mr. Quincey, if you'd like to make that access available.
Yep, I have, let's see, David, oh wait, here's David Reed. There we go.
Sorry, I needed to unmute myself. Committee, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great, thank you so much, and thank you all for the time you put into this. I know how much work this is for this free job, but we all appreciate it there very much. I also have Supervising Ranger from State Parks, Kevin Harder, on the phone that he might be able to join us to answer questions. I just want to give you guys an idea of why we put this application in. Redwood Parks Conservancy is the official nonprofit partner for state parks, starting in Eureka here and going up to the Oregon border. And we help fund and find funding and do the work for vital projects that our public agency partners don't have funds in their regular budget, either from Sacramento or the feds. And I think that might be Kevin's noise in the background. I apologize for that. He's on vacation too. We saw this application possibility and said we would love to be part of it. Right now, there is 1 3/4 lifeguard personnel on their staff for state parks. They mostly patrol the property that is state park beaches, like the Patrick's Point, et cetera. This position, if Measure Z funding could be made available, would be patrolling 30 miles roughly of beachfront that is not in state park control. That would be the North Jetty, places like Big Lagoon, Humboldt Bay, places where we're seeing more and more incidents, but there isn't a lifeguard that is out there. And of course, they'd be using a patrol pattern that would focus on places where there are more incidents in the past and more tragedies. And I think that the 2 responses that we put in writing from lifeguard Dylan Clevenger and Ranger Harder probably do a lot better job of answering the first question than I can, which is this a education specialist or a roving lifeguard? And the short answer, I guess, is both. Lifeguards spend most of their time doing education, reaching out to people who are acting irresponsibly or maybe putting themselves in danger, but they have the skills available to jump into action and do the rescue, or unfortunately, sometimes the recovery, or when things go wrong. And
Okay.
Kevin, if you wanted to add to anything, I think you're still on the line.
Go ahead.
Okay, this is Kevin. I don't know if you guys can hear me or not.
Yes, we can.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I'll just reiterate what David was saying. You know, our thought is, I realize it's not a traditional lifeguarding scene up here as far as what you'd find south of San Francisco, all along the California coastline. We are the last piece of coast that has put together a lifeguard program. We have programs in Sonoma County, Mendocino County now out of Fort Bragg, and then our very new program up here. Most programs are focused on, you know, the heavily visited beaches with guard towers, and also lifeguards that are in vehicles like we're doing. Everywhere north of San Francisco, so Sonoma Coast, Mendocino Coast, and our coast, those are all lifeguarded by lifeguards that are actively patrolling, you know, vast areas by vehicle. And like David was saying, you know, 99% of what we do is go talk to folks that are, you know, acting irresponsible near the ocean, and you know, give them alternatives to the activities that they might be doing that are putting them in danger. And then of course, you know, we carry the equipment necessary to, and we have the training necessary to go into the water. You know, just about any conditions. We have a pretty rigorous training program. Our people are, you know, more than just, you know, a high level swimmers. All of our people are well versed in the ocean, you know, surfers, divers, so forth, so on. So it's kind of a lifestyle for them. They, you know, they enjoy the prospect of, you know, interacting with people, teaching about the aquatic interface that we have with our, you know, our lands up here. And since we put together our program, which, like David said, is focused mainly on our state park beaches, you know, it's hard to put into numbers how many people we've talked to and educated, and over the last few years, you know, we've been a part of some heavy calls, working with Coast Guard. And also we've affected, you know, a handful of rescues where, you know, people likely would have perished. So we are looking at this position, like David said, at primarily, you know, the areas that we're not currently covering. You know, we hear the calls come out over the scanner for, you know, people at, you know, the North Jetty or the South Jetty or out on the peninsula. And, you know, we're just, from our standpoint, we're just like, you know, I wish I was closer. You know, because usually we're up in the northern part of the county. And so it's a, you know, it's a no-brainer for us if we want to make people safe near the water, and educate as many people as we can, which I think is super responsible for all of us, since we're seeing, you know, I'm sure everybody will agree, the amount of people coming to our county, especially for tourism season, it's just unbelievable. If you haven't been to a beach during the summertime lately, it looks a lot like Southern California these days. So we think it's you know, kind of a no-brainer to get, and it's a cheap way to get somebody out there educating, and, you know, it'll be a matter of time before the person, whoever that is, you know, if we're lucky enough to get funding, saves a life or two. So that's, you know, that's the importance we see in this. Hopefully you do too.
Thank you, Kevin, and thanks for backing me up. And I do want to speak to the committee that we did look at trying to cut this budget down, but at this point we can't see, at least in this 1 year time, where we could find funding for either the vehicle or the position. So we did leave it the same at this point.
Okay. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay, moving to number 28. I know we're a little over time, but we're almost through this process, so it seems to me to make sense to just continue on and at least continue through this set of applications. So this would be an opportunity to ask any questions regarding number 28, the Rio Dale Police Department funding for 5 MDTs. Any committee members have any questions? Do we have a representative of Rio Dale, Mr. Quincey?
Yep, we got Chief Connor on the line.
Okay, would you welcome him, please?
Good afternoon, Chair Zimmer, members of the committee. Jeff Connor from the Rio Dale Police Department. For the sake of brevity, I'll just say that this is an effort to continue to modernize the Rio Dale Police Department.
Okay, and the 5 units would, I assume, put one of the MDTs in each of your patrol vehicles, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so this would get you, this isn't a partial project, this would get all of your operating units up to the MDT level.
That is correct.
Okay. Any
I have a question.
Committee members, go ahead.
Yeah, Chief Connor, thank you for your application. I just had a question. Normally, we fund a half-time secretary position for Measure Z, and I guess you no longer need that funding. Is that correct?
Well, after it wasn't funded last year, I decided not to apply for it again.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry about that. You did get recently funded, though, correct, as far as the mid-year, but I know it's halfway through the year.
So that is correct. Well, the allocation was for $33,000, but we'll only be able to use about $15,000 of that. We'll have to return the rest.
Yeah, just for the record's sake, I believe your application was the most highly recommended one that was not funded in the first round. Unfortunately, the Board of Supervisors juggled that sequence on us a little bit. So we understand, and there is some sympathy for your position, believe me. Any other questions for Chief Connor? Okay, thank you for your time, sir. Moving on, application 29 was deemed to be not eligible. So that would take us to the final one, application 30, the STAR Southern Trinity Area Rescue, support for some paid EMT positions for the ambulance service. Any questions from the committee? Do we have a STAR representative available, Mr. Quincey?
Yeah, Chair, I see Brooke Ensminger is on the line, and you're here with the committee.
Oh,
Good
okay.
afternoon.
Hi, you guys can hear me then?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I have two computers and I don't know how to use them, so. Well, any questions would be great. I want to say thank you for considering us again. We've been funded by Major Z for 3 years. This would be our 4th. We've served this part of Humboldt County for over 40 years, so it was hard when we had to come asking for money the first time, but our volunteer base is no longer very existent. So it's where we are. And rural ambulances seem to be in that situation everywhere because we don't have a big revenue, but we have a big area. We would be willing to reduce $10,000 of our request. I didn't see the email asking about that until this morning. Unfortunately, I somehow missed it in my inbox. But we could reduce $10,000. I think we did that in the past and were able to twist someone else's arm for it, and it worked out. So we could do that this time as well, if that helps at all.
Every little bit helps.
That's what I figured. I hope that I answered the questions that were sent to me. I don't see them on the screen, but I'm assuming you guys got those answers. If there were any questions, I'd love to answer them.
Any committee members have questions for Ms. Centimere?
I do.
Ms. Campbell?
So I want to support this for the new people that are on our committee and may not know the history of this. This ambulance company is based out of Humboldt County, but most of the people that they serve are from Humboldt County, especially out of the Ruth Lake area. And in the past, they've used all volunteers, and then they all aged out, as they say, and they were really desperate for money just to pay. And as Stephen said, up in Hoopaw, their EMTs are getting $12 an hour. Their paramedics are making $15, $16 an hour, which to me is, you can go to McDonald's and make 15. So there's something very wrong with our system that we only pay these highly trained people very little money, and they're still in there and dedicated to what they do. So I know they've saved a lot of lives, and if we don't fund them, then they have to wait for a different ambulance company to show up, and it can be a very long time. So I support this, and I know they do a good job on very little. So that's all. For the new people, I didn't know if they'd understand why we're asking for money for out of the area. It's not really out of the area because the people that they serve are mostly from Humboldt County.
Okay, any other committee members have questions?
Yeah, Glenn, I do.
I've got a question for you.
Go ahead, Ernie.
Well, go ahead. Whoever was in front of me, go ahead.
This is Bob. Hi, Brooke. I have a question that's similar to the question that I asked the ambulance company in Willow Creek, which is trying to understand the total cost of providing the ambulance service. And then it looks like you're getting roughly $26,000 in revenue coming in to go ahead and fund it. And then the balance, I guess, is being funded through Measure Z and whatever other revenues you get for it.
Right.
Could you
So
elaborate on that?
yeah. So the average cost a year, I believe, is about $200,000 for us, because we do use a lot of volunteers still. So we don't have the staffing costs that say Kamau does, because all of their staff is paid. So it is about $200,000, give or take, depending on repairs and costs of supplies and such. And we do get, like I said, we have fundraisers when we can. This year, obviously, that was not as easy. And then we do get some funding from Trinity County, although that is up in the air right now. They will give us funding, but we've been working with them on trying to get them to step up a little more, because we do about 3/4 of our area is Trinity County, and about 1/4 of our area is in Humboldt County. Like Ginger said, though, I would say a greater amount of our patients are Humboldt County residents, or because of our location, residents from out of the county, out of the state, or out of the country, due to the nature of the business out here. And which is why our patient revenue, the number you guys asked for, is so low, because when you bill out of the country, you don't get paid, that kind of thing. And so we do have some other donors like Trinity County that fill in that gap. And then yes, Measure Z is a part of that funding. And we were fortunate this year. I'm not a finance person, so I'm looking at our profit and loss and our budget and trying to explain it to you guys. But this year we were fortunate to be able to help the Forest Service in being a standby ambulance for the fires out here. We're unfortunate because it was our area and we lost a lot of people and homes. So we lost staff, but we were able to actually balance out our income and not be in debt this year for the first time in years. We have always run in the negative, but up until 3 years ago, we had federal funding that came in and covered that through our clinic that we're based at. The federal government decided 3 years ago that emergency services were not fundable through that program anymore, only primary care. That's what put us in this extremely tight spot and why we ended up at your committee in the first place. The federal government doesn't consider us fundable. The state says it's the county's responsibility to provide an ambulance and the counties don't have money. So that's the nation's predicament. But that's, I don't know if that helps explain that question. I might have went off track.
Well, that answers my question. It's very helpful to try to understand the intricacies of how we're trying to put a bunch of Band-Aids together to provide these critical services and understanding the challenges that you face chasing revenue streams. Thank you for doing what you're able to do.
Go ahead, Ernie.
Yeah, quite a few of us on this committee have been first responders or are now first responders. So you have a certain amount of sympathy in this group already. So would you tell us how far you are from the nearest hospital?
Our base is 48, an average of 50 miles from Redwood Memorial Hospital, which is the closest hospital to us.
And that cuts into that golden hours that the golden hour that first responders like to think about all the time. So
yes.
And with the amount of Humboldt County people that are involved in your ambulance care, I think it's a pretty significant service to Humboldt County. I just wanted to say that and thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? Okay, thank you for your time. All right, that brings us to the end of
Wait,
the.
Glenn.
Yes.
Glenn, I have a comment. Sorry.
I'm sorry.
My hand was up. You probably couldn't see it. I just want to remind the committee that like Kamoa and this ambulance service buy most of their products in Humboldt County. And I know that the Kamoa spends thousands and thousands of dollars excuse me, in Humboldt County buying gas products, medical products. So they're bringing it back.
You're going to make it there, girl?
Yeah.
Good.
Okay. Any other comments or questions on this process? Okay, we agreed that we would accept general public comment at this point on the process of fleshing out these applications. Do we have any members of the public that would like to comment on the process or any particular application?
Chair, I see one hand up and I will bring them in. Looks like Lieutenant Eberhard.
Good afternoon, welcome.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, thank you. I apologize. Difficult to communicate with the chief. He's out of town, but I just wanted an opportunity to weigh in on the radio request on number 11.
Okay.
With all appreciation for what the sheriff said regarding the fact that there may be some funding for that, we do have some concern regarding the fact that communication is a critical safety issue. The Eureka Police Department has switched to a digital platform, and that does put not just our agency, but most of the agencies around in a predicament with communication. Recently, we had an opportunity where a circumstance happened where we were transporting somebody in custody, and we hit Eureka, and we had the subject have a seizure. Our officer not being able to jump onto Eureka's channel, was in a little bit of a predicament. It caused a moment of panic that could have been alleviated with the ability to communicate. So we do see the radios as something that we do need to address sooner than later. And our request is only for the portables, not the in-car radios. We didn't want to give the full ask. We wanted to compromise with what we're doing.
Okay, thank you. Any questions of the committee for the lieutenant?
No questions.
Okay, thank you for your time. Any other public members like to make a comment about process or any application that we've been discussing?
Yeah, Chair, it looks like we have Mr. Mattson.
I just want to go on. Yes, thank you, Chair and members of the committee. I just want to go on record for Public Works to support application number 23, the Sheriff's Radio Project. Thank you.
Okay. Any other public comment on the process or applications?
Nope, I'm not seeing any, Chair.
Okay. We've reached the point where it seems like it's a natural break in my mind. We had talked about potentially reading applications, but or almost 3/4 of an hour over our general timeline. So with the committee's concurrence, my suggestion would be that we begin the ranking process on the 18th. Is that acceptable to the group?
Yes.
There's 2 hours of daylight left. Come on.
Yeah, Glenn, I gave everything a number 1, so I think I'm going to have to rethink a few things. Might be able to do that in a week.
Well, I gave everything a number 3, so we'll probably balance out. All right. If you'd all be prepared then next Thursday, the 18th, to begin the ranking process.
Chair, just for my OCD, can we have a motion to end the meeting and then continue the item for the ranking at the next meeting, because this is agendized for today.
Okay, certainly. So the chair would entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting, continue item D5, the ranking process, to the meeting on the 18th. Is there such a motion?
I have a comment to put in first. I remember Ginger having a question about a future meeting procedure in September, and you had mentioned visiting that at the end of this meeting.
Yeah, I plan to do that, certainly. So do we have a motion to adjourn this meeting, continue item D5 to our meeting on the 18th?
I move that we adjourn the meeting and postponed number 5 to the next meeting on the 18th.
Okay, is there a second?
I second.
Any discussion from committee members? Any discussion from the public? Okay, all those in favor, please indicate by raising your hand. Opposed? Okay, we'll consider the meeting adjourned. By way of this process, we would then begin the ranking process on the 18th. So please be prepared to begin that process. If you have any additional questions that develop in the meantime, please forward them to staff so they can be communicated to the applicants. In reference to Nicholas's comment, we had talked about having a process meeting or kind of a process evaluation meeting. My sense is that we would schedule that in the relatively near future as opposed to our traditional September meeting. Was that your intent, Mr. Nicholas?
I wanted to have a process meeting just regarding financial planning and looking at what we're funding based on what the ordinance language is and how to be equitable. And at the beginning of this meeting, I believe Ginger came with separate concerns that I wanted to make sure were addressed.
Okay. So what is the sense of the committee? Would you like to take?
Chair, we just adjourned, Chair, so we can't really discuss business.
Okay. We will take this up next. Would you agendize then a discussion for future agenda planning as a last item on the meeting on the 18th?
We can do that.
Okay. All right. We'll see you all next Thursday. Thank you.
Thanks.
Take care, everybody.
Hey, Sean.